So, a couple of years ago, I was what you might call a bit of an edgelord. I was obsessed with disgusting and scary images, offensive humor, and no right was more important to anybody than my right to free speech, which, you know, mostly to be honest, was just me throwing slurs at people over voice chat. I'm not sure if I can say that I'm a better person now or if I'm more mature, but thinking about the way that I used to act usually results in me running to throw up somewhere now. I mean, I can barely look at anything gory or offensive without it instantly relating to my past self, and then I start getting flooded with all of these unwanted images that escalate from worse to worse to worse. I mean, I've officially turned into the guy that sends personal messages to creators thanking them for their trigger warnings. It's honestly saved me from getting violently ill while I was at work. And as you might guess, I didn't suddenly just mature in a couple of years. This is an effect of trauma, or PTSD is what my therapist calls it, although he doesn't believe in the events that led to this PTSD. He has a theory that it was more just, I don't know, a nervous breakdown over years of desensitizing myself, coupled with false memories and other junk. Maybe that's what my insurance is paying him for, you know? Not to actually fix me, but just to give me an alternative explanation that is a lot less disturbing than what actually happened that night. I used to work second shift customer service. It was heavily unsupervised. So after the first shift was completely gone and left for the day, we would just start regularly drinking and doing drugs to make it to the end of the shift. We kept this group chat where we would just post crazy stuff and we would try to make each other crack up in the middle of customer calls. Also, we had this gamer girl that we worked with that would just send like video game memes and stuff like that. It was cool. And one day she shares this thing in the chat about something called the Nope game. She said it was like this video compilation of messed up stuff, and the challenge was to see how long you could watch it without shutting it off or turning away. Well, it sounded like something hilarious to do, at the time at least, but the more we looked into it, the more we realized that it wasn't like a video that you could just look up and play. It was actually a specific live stream that you had to know about. And not only that, but it was almost always streamed through different platforms on brand new accounts. So after hours of digging, we found out that one was about to happen in a few days around midnight, which was perfect. I mean, we got off at about 11 o'clock every night, and then we would go hit up a diner to go get drinks and slam some greasy breakfast food, but instead of that, we were going to go do this now. One guy was even joking about watching people dying videos to prep him in order to win. Another person we worked with said that it would mostly just be a bunch of cringe stuff or like extreme fetish stuff, so he wasn't really worried. In hindsight, dude, we were so naive and we were all trying to act so tough, and we were just salivating at the idea of showing people or each other how crazy we were. The night of the stream, we all ended up at the gamer girl's apartment, which was basically just a one-bedroom and a living room with a bunch of stained carpets and empty takeout containers everywhere. Her computer was actually in her bedroom, so we all piled in there however we could. Another one of us was just sitting on the floor. Some of us were standing around. We had been drinking and smoking since we had gotten off work. But let me just say, we were all still pretty level-headed. I mean, to put it into perspective, we had all still gotten perfect customer service scores while being a lot more messed up than what we were that night. The gamer girl set up this recording app so that we could rewatch the Nope game later, or maybe even do our own live stream of it. We figured, that's kind of just how things like this spread. Anything that goes online gets shared to death with people who will move on to the next thing once it gets boring. We were just early adopters of this Nope game. Now, at this point, I'm realizing that I've been stalling a little bit because I don't really want to talk more about what happens next, but I don't know. I figure anyone who reads this will probably find it stupid or silly or just like somebody else's nightmare, but this was a real nightmare that we all shared. There was this old countdown reel, and then the stream started. It was just this teenage Asian girl in what looked like a hospital gown, sitting on a metal chair in some sort of clinical white, spotless room. It's very hospital-like. And literally, as soon as it started, she says, 1, in perfect unaccented English, making me think that it was probably filmed somewhere here in the US. 2, she says, and then something squirmed in my stomach. 3, and the gamer girl's arm started to twitch really hard at this point, startling all of us in the room. It was like this spasm had just moved through us like a wave. Despite the booze or the pills or the weed, I didn't feel numb at all. I felt tense and exposed, and I felt raw, like I was transfixed, 4, she says, and then I realized only 4 seconds have passed, but already I wanted to leave. More than anything, I wanted to get up and get out of that room. 5, she counts, and then her skin starts to glitch on the screen. Not like she was like a 3D model or anything, but instead it looked like flesh and bone were just spiking a little bit in random directions, and then it returned to normal. One of the guys yelled out, "Nope!" And then he ran out of the room, and even though I wanted to run out right behind him, I felt like I was trapped. I couldn't even look to watch him walk out of the room because I was fixated on the screen. We did taunt him a little bit for checking out so early, and then we continued to watch on, and as I'm remembering this, I think somebody in the room was even crying a little bit too, but I couldn't even turn my head to see who it was, and nothing bad had even happened yet. It was just a vibe that was being pumped into the room through the monitor, like some sort of gas. It wouldn't get really bad until she hit the first minute. By then, her skin and bones were regularly glitching and spiking, and they kind of moved like this graphic equalizer. I tried putting my hand between my eyes, to avoid the chaos on the screen that was that monotone girl, but when I looked at the back of my hand, I could see that my own skin was now rippling, kind of like a wet surface that a drop of water had fallen into. I could feel my joints grinding a little bit, and as the girl counted to 73, she started to bend sideways in this unnatural way. She continued to do that through 74, 75, 76. She kept bending like some sort of snake, and I could feel my joints start to strain and move in these weird ways that I've never moved in before. I wasn't moving a single muscle, but it felt like my bones were just taking over and doing their own thing. Another colleague that we worked with that was joining us that night, he started to run out of the room, but he tripped and he fell on the way out. 84. And he got up. 85. Then he fell over again. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see his flesh moving like waves in water. His limbs were curving in these strange ways. It took him a few tries, but he eventually did make it out of the room before she got to 100. And by now, it was no longer a challenge, right, or a game, and it stopped being one a minute and a half ago. At this point, I was completely trapped. I was just watching this girl on the screen spiral into herself. And the gamer girl, she starts having spasms, and now she's making these loud, wet breathing noises beside me. And I could hear the other guy was still behind me, and he was knocking on the ground at this very fast rate, like he was vibrating. I'm guessing that there were now just 3 of us left in the room. I figured that I would try to focus my attention on him, and while the girl on the screen counted 112, I was slowly turning my head away from her gaze, which was just peering at me from the core of a small, slow whirlpool of flesh and bone and hair. She was like a liquid that was pulsing with every single number. 117. And the flesh pulsed. 118. It was like a visualizer of dread, spiking and shifting with my own terror. But little by little, I was able to turn my head away past what felt natural. And by the time she said 122, I was looking at the guy behind me. And now, I don't know what was more scary, the fact that my neck must have been turned a full 180, or the fact that he was pulsating and warping and glitching even more violently than the gamer girl was next to me. One of his fists was just jackhammering at the floor, making this very, rapid and loud thumping sound with blood starting to pool in that same spot on the floor. By the time the girl on the screen gets to 136, I was finally granted a distraction. I could hear my friends outside of the bedroom screaming and yelling at us to get out, but there was no way they were coming back in for us. I started to roll and to slither towards the door in ways that I'm not even sure that I can describe. I felt loose and like rubbery, kind of like I was melting. It was like some sort of trip or like a nightmare, but except I had never felt more sober. By the time the girl on the screen got to 149, I had made it to the door. Somebody flung it open, and I felt two arms reach in, grab me by my shirt, and then drag me out of the room, all while they were screaming, "Look at him! Oh my God! Oh my God!" And now that I'm all the way outside of the room and the doors closed behind me, I can still feel the dread, still thick in my head, but with that Asian girl's voice muffled from the other room, it was starting to subside. It was now being replaced by this sort of stiffness and this excruciating pain. It felt like I had fallen down 2 flights of stairs just trying to get away from that computer screen. And my friends that were in the hallway that were with me, they were starting to count too, but it wasn't close to what the girl was counting. I could hear all of them shout, 1, and then they get into this position, 2, and then I realized they all had pillows duct taped over their ears. And then at once they all shout, 3, and then they all run back into the bedroom, and several moments later they come out with the gamer girl. She looked big, man, like uncomfortably and painfully bloated for a second. Pretty quickly though, she starts to deflate into what I normally associate her with her scrawny emo self. There was a little bit of blood on the corner of her mouth, but she was breathing. I could see her bloodshot eyes. They were darting back and forth until they eventually landed in the middle. Now, I think she was experiencing the same sort of euphoria that I was in the moment, which meant that the pain was still excruciating, but at least it wasn't spiraling out of control and getting worse. My coworkers pulled the pillows off of their ears and said that she was the only one in there. They even looked for their other friend and checked the bathroom and the closet, but he must have gotten up. When the stream stopped, so did our nausea. We stumbled back into the bedroom. The screen was now black, and we saw bloody handprints covering the floor and the walls and the ceiling. But terrifyingly, or maybe it was mercifully, there was no sign of that friend that we left behind, the one that was just pounding on the floor behind me. We did check out the video that we recorded, but thankfully, dude, there was nothing there. It was just a black screen, as if the stream had some sort of protective software installed that was preventing us from duplicating it. I don't know, dude. All I do know is that it did last 11 minutes and 6 seconds before the stream ended. And it was just a few minutes after that before we had worked up the courage and the nerve to go back into the room looking for our now missing friend and to stop the recording app. After that, in the week following that night, we never saw each other again after work. We didn't go out. Our customer service scores were dropping fast, and HR even asked us what happened to our coworker after his 3rd no-call no-show. But we didn't have any answers for HR. We didn't even have any answers for ourselves. A few weeks later, we all get laid off when the second shift was ultimately eliminated and it just became this regular 8 to 5 call center with no second shift. I was not offered to move to that shift. And you know what? For those last few nights that I worked there, I would just stare at the ringing phone and ignore it. So yeah, I get it. They wanted to get rid of me. But it was better that way. If I had been fired, I wouldn't have been able to collect unemployment, or seek help. I saw a therapist and I saw a dermatologist to treat the scars and the stretch marks on my limbs. And I know that one of the guys never got any help. Instead, he got a shotgun and he ended up on the news after a gruesome murder-suicide that involved a bunch of strangers. The other guy, the one that left first in the room, was actually okay. I see him around town every now and then, but, we never talk. We lost track of the gamer girl. She got evicted, and she hasn't updated her socials since that night. And the very last one to stay in that room, the one that we left behind, the guy that watched the whole stream, I don't think of him anymore. But sometimes when I do start to picture him in my head, twisting and shaking and snarling and stuff, I quickly stop myself. If I think about him, I'll just make myself sick, so I try not to. Nope. I want to thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this story. It's called The Nope Game, and it's written by /Javier Laustano. Javier Laustano. I'm probably mispronouncing that. I just pronounced it the exact same way 2 different times. Sorry, Javier. But I'll, of course, link to the original story in the notes of this episode so that you can go read it for yourself if you want to, or interact, or see what else Javier may be up to. Seems like a cool dude. He let me read this story, so thank you, Javier. I think the goal with this particular podcast or channel or, whatever it ends up being is to give you something entertaining and engaging to listen to. The story lengths are going to vary, of course, because not every story is, 2,000 words or whatever. But really, if you're like driving or you're working out or you're just doing stuff around the house and you just don't want to listen to nothing, maybe you can pop this in, listen to a scary story. Pretty much all of them that are featured on this project are going to be video game based. I say that right after releasing a story that's not video game based. I realize that. But I mean, the word game is in the title, The Nope Game, so I'm counting it. Plus, there was a computer monitor mentioned multiple times. So. But yeah, I think the gist is going to be, if you like scary stories, and if you like gaming or want to like gaming, and through this context, through this contextual lens of horror, you may be into this. So, hope you stick around. Hope you share it with a friend who also likes scary things and or gaming, and wants something fun to listen to, something engaging to listen to, hopefully. Also, I just want this to be like high quality. Like, no matter how long the story is, I want you to be able to know that you can put it on and be entertained with like the music and the sound effects and my delivery. So, I don't know. Let me know how I'm doing. I think this is going to be episode 1, I'm pretty sure. So, leave a review, leave a comment. Let me know what you're looking forward to, what you want to hear, in the future. And I think with that, I'm gone.